The room buzzed with the tension only live television could create. Under the glare of the studio lights, Kellyanne Conway leaned forward, her voice sharp, deliberate, and dripping with confidence. "Congresswoman Crockett," she began, her tone laced with condescension, "you talk about justice, but all I see is performance." The audience murmured. Across the table, Jasmine Crockett sat still, her eyes steady, her hands folded. Every muscle in her face radiated calm strength. She had been underestimated before, by colleagues, by commentators, by systems built to silence women like her. But she had learned long ago that power isn't about volume, it's about truth, and tonight, truth was her weapon. Kellyanne smirked, sensing victory. For years, she had dominated political debates with quick wit and sharp jabs, but Jasmine wasn't like the others who fell into her traps. Instead of reacting, she waited, letting the silence stretch just long enough for everyone to feel it. Then, in a voice that was firm yet graceful, she said, "The difference between me and you, Miss Conway, is that I fight for people who don't have a voice. You fight to make sure they never find it." The room froze. Even Kellyanne blinked. The audience broke into applause, a wave of sound that echoed beyond the studio walls. That single moment, measured, powerful, unapologetic, was the spark that would set the internet on fire. As the debate continued, Kellyanne tried to recover. She threw data points and political jargon like daggers, hoping to pierce Jasmine's composure. But Jasmine met each argument with facts, experience, and compassion. "You call it chaos," she said at one point. "I call it democracy. It's messy because people like me are finally being heard." The audience leaned in, captivated. This wasn't just politics, it was poetry delivered with purpose. Kellyanne's polished rhetoric began to sound hollow in comparison. Jasmine spoke from a place deeper than politics, a place of lived truth. And in that authenticity, the world saw something real. The clip of Jasmine's comeback exploded across social media within hours. Hashtags like "Nah Crockett Clapback" and "Truth Hits Hard" trended worldwide. Celebrities reposted it, journalists analyzed it, and ordinary people, students, mothers, workers, shared it with captions like, "This is how you stand your ground." Jasmine's phone buzzed endlessly. Her team called it a defining moment, but while the world celebrated her strength, Jasmine sat quietly in her office, staring at her reflection in the window. She wasn't thinking about fame, she was thinking about responsibility, what it meant to become a symbol for something bigger than herself. Behind the scenes, not everyone was celebrating. Political commentators questioned her tone, suggesting she was too emotional or too defiant. Opponents accused her of chasing viral moments. Jasmine had expected this. Being a strong woman in politics came with constant judgment. But what hurt wasn't the criticism. It was how quickly people twisted sincerity into spectacle. Still, she refused to dim her light. "If telling the truth makes me emotional," she told her aide, "then maybe we need more emotion in politics." She smiled faintly, knowing that authenticity always came with a price. Meanwhile, Kellyanne faced her own reckoning. For the first time in years, she wasn't the center of control. Her media appearances were overshadowed by a clip that painted her not as clever, but cruel. Her supporters rallied behind her, but privately she couldn't shake the image of Jasmine's calm defiance. That look in her eyes, steady, unshaken, had struck something in her. It wasn't anger, it was reflection. Kellyanne had built a career on controlling narratives, but for once she had become part of one she couldn't spin. And late at night, watching the clip again, she whispered to herself, "Maybe the truth stings because it's real." Days later, Jasmine was invited to speak on a national stage about leadership and courage. She walked to the podium in a crimson suit, the crowd rising to their feet. Cameras flashed, but her focus was on the message. "We live in a time where truth sounds like rebellion," she began, "but speaking up isn't defiance. It's duty, especially for women told to sit down and smile while others rewrite our stories. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. My comeback wasn't about me, she continued softly. It was about everyone who's ever been told they don't belong at the table. You do, and your voice matters. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted nearly a minute. Kellyanne watched that speech from her living room, her expression unreadable. The old instinct to critique, to counter, rose in her chest. But something in Jasmine's sincerity disarmed her. She saw not an opponent, but a mirror reflecting the very passion that had once driven her before politics hardened her. That night, she drafted a short tweet. Strength isn't silence and grace isn't weakness, respect. It was simple, unexpected, and to many, shocking. The post was shared tens of thousands of times. For once, Kellyanne's words didn't divide, they united. In the weeks that followed, the two women found themselves in the same circles again. Panels, interviews, conferences. They never became friends, but there was an unspoken respect between them now. Kellyanne stopped using sarcasm when speaking about Jasmine. Jasmine, in turn, acknowledged Kellyanne's accomplishments, even while disagreeing with her politics. In a world obsessed with conflict, their civility became its own quiet revolution. "Disagreement doesn't make us enemies," Jasmine said in one interview. "It makes us human." Those words resonated across a nation tired of shouting matches. Behind closed doors, Jasmine continued to mentor young leaders, especially women of color, teaching them how to navigate spaces that weren't built for them. She reminded them that power didn't come from anger, but from conviction. "Don't let them define your strength as aggression," she told one young woman. "Let your truth be your calmest weapon." Each time she said it, she remembered that night in the studio, the spark that started everything. What began as an argument had become a movement. What began as a clapback had turned into clarity. Kellyanne, too, began to change. Her interviews became less combative, more introspective. She spoke openly about burnout, pressure, and the toll of constant confrontation. Some said Jasmine's composure had softened her edge. Others said it had reminded her of something she'd lost. Either way, her tone carried new humility. "You don't have to shout to be heard," she said once. "You just have to say something worth listening to." It was a lesson that echoed Jasmine's own message, a strange harmony between two very different voices. Years later, people still remembered the moment that broke the internet, not as a feud, but as a turning point, a symbol of how truth, grace, and courage can outshine cynicism. In classrooms and conferences, the clip was shown as an example of modern leadership, of how authenticity can shake the foundations of old power. Jasmine often ended her talks with a simple reflection: when they aim low, rise higher. When they shout, speak truth. And when the world watches, make it count. Her words lingered long after she left the stage, a timeless reminder that real power doesn't come from winning arguments. It comes from standing in your truth, even when the world tries to silence it.